Hey creeps, my name is Cameron Chaney, author of Autumn Crow, and the host here on Library Macabre, where we talk about books, movies, writing, and all things spooky. And today we're going to have kind of a more of a casual, sit-down kind of video, talking about my top 5 books that I read in the year of 2022. Usually at the end of the year, I will do a top 10 video, but really, I did not read very many books in 2022. It's much different than 2021 when I read about 120 books. This year, I only read about 50. And some of those I haven't even finished yet. I'm still working my way through them. So it wasn't as successful of a reading year, unfortunately. It was just a very busy year. You know, I work full time. I run this YouTube channel, which I think takes way more work than anybody really realizes. I am an author trying very hard to finish my upcoming book. I promise, guys, Autumn Crow High is coming. I just keep pushing it back because life is very unpredictable. I get very busy with work and trying to get YouTube videos pumped out every week. It just falls to the wayside a lot, but the book is coming. I am writing the last few chapters of the book, trying to get it just right. I really want this to be a good book. I don't want to rush this at all because this is the first book in a series and I'm trying to set up a really big series that is going to have a lot of payoff in the end. Therefore, I need to get the beginning of the book just right. So it is taking a lot of work. I think the upcoming books will go a lot faster than this one. This is just a really big one because it's my starting point. So there's a little update on the book. When it comes to videos, I'm sorry I've been gone for the last few weeks. I've just been trying to enjoy the holiday season. I've had a wonderful, magical Christmas. New Year's was great. Everything has been really, really wonderful. I hope all of you guys had a great Christmas. I know I did. I hope you got plenty of great gifts. I hope you got time to rest and relax and be with your loved ones and pet your cats and dogs. Speaking of Christmas, I will be back with a couple of Christmas hauls very soon. I have all of the Christmas stuff that I got from this year. And actually, when my channel was on a hiatus, I filmed a Christmas haul last year at the end of 2021. Is that it? 2021, yes. And I have not posted it. I haven't even edited it yet. I don't know what's taken me so long to get that up, but I have this unedited Christmas haul from last year that I would still like to post because I kind of took a long time getting that video set up. And I do have a lot of other videos that I've already filmed that I need to edit. So there's still lots of videos coming. This season of Library Macabre is not over yet, I promise. I'm still going to be posting videos throughout January and into February. And I believe that's when I'm going to end season 1 of Library Macabre, and then season 2 will pick up at the beginning of spring. So there are some things to look forward to. I just wanted to give you a little preview of what's to come because I know I've been gone for a while. But anyway, without further ado, let's get into my top 5 books that I read in 2022. I'm gonna start off with The Art of Goosebumps by Sarah Rodriguez with an introduction by R.L. Stine. This was published last year by Dynamite Press. It is a big hardcover book, kind of a coffee table book. And I really enjoyed this. It was definitely one of my favorite books that I read last year. It's got some text in it. Mostly it's an art book, but there is quite a bit of text here about Tim Jacobus, the cover illustrator for Goosebumps, and kind of the process behind his work and some of these iconic covers. I do have some nitpicks, but overall, I highly recommend this one. So I'm gonna give you guys a little peek at the inside. A little peek of the guts, shall we say. When you open the book, nothing fancy, no in papers. I kind of wish they had done something there, but there is this. Maybe they should have printed that as the in papers of the book. That would have been really cool. So when you open it up, you have a introduction by Rachel Deering and an introduction by R.L. Stine. And then you get into the very first series of Goosebumps. And what we have here, page by page, is each book in the series. So here is, of course, book number 1, the book that started it all, Welcome to Dead House. So we have a little synopsis up here and some pencil sketches, early pencil sketches done by Tim Jacobus, and an early color mock-up that he did. And then you have the finished artwork. And that is the case for all of the covers in here. You get some different mock-ups and the original cover art. I really like this right here. This is The Girl Who Cried Monster. And you have some pencil sketches, a color mock-up, and then you have a photograph here of Tim Jacobus doing the pose for the cover, so that way he could copy it for his final painting. He's just a really cool guy, and I like getting to see those pictures of him posing for the covers. You also get all of the Goosebumps Series 2000 covers, since he did all of those as well. And it's awesome to be able to see those pencil sketches and to see the full artwork, because on the Series 2000 books, the artwork was always cropped. In the book here, you have uncropped artwork. So I like that a lot. I like getting to see the full image in high resolution. At the end of the book, you also have some unreleased Goosebumps books and the cover art that he did for those. So there is the unreleased Goosebumps Series 2000 book. There are the unreleased Goosebumps Gold books, which were a source of many rumors at my school. The kids would always talk about the Goosebumps Gold books and that they're hiding in the library somewhere and we need to find them, which was not the case. They were never published. They were never even written, as far as I know. Now, like I said, the book isn't perfect. I wish the pages were a bit thicker. I think they're a little bit too thin. I would have liked them to be a bit thicker like other books of this nature. And last but not least, I would have really loved to see some of the covers from the Give Yourself Goosebumps books. Tim Jacobus did a couple of those covers. Mostly they were done by other artists. So I understand that this book was mostly focusing on Tim Jacobus's art. So maybe we will get a second Art of Goosebumps book that goes over some of those other Goosebumps books, like the Choose Your Own Adventure style ones, and some of those other spin-offs. But anyway, not a perfect book, but a very solid one, and I'm really glad this exists because it's awesome, and it does totally cater to people like me who grew up with Goosebumps and loves it with an extreme passion. Speaking of Goosebumps by R.L. Stine, I also love Fear Street by R.L. Stine, which was his series for teens back in the day. I have done a whole lot of vlogs about Fear Street books, so if you want to check those out, I have a playlist on my channel all about Fear Street. I have been reading them in publication order ever since the movies came out a couple of years ago, and this is one that I read last year. This is Goodnight Kiss. I'd never read it before. So this is about some teenagers who are on vacation at the beach, and I think it's in Florida, and there are a couple of vampires that have made a deal with each other that if they can turn someone else into a vampire from this group, they will win. It's just like a little game that they're playing. This is, of course, a cheesy book. It is not meant to be taken seriously. It is just pure pulp, and I loved it. I had a blast with this. It reminded me a whole lot of The Lost Boys. It's really funny. I loved the bickering between the vampires and the descriptions of the beach. You know, there's a lot of descriptions of the beach at nighttime when it's foggy and there's like a full moon in the sky. It's very atmospheric. I loved this one. It is one of my favorite Fear Street books now, if not my favorite. I know there's a Goodnight Kiss 2. I have not read that yet. It's going to come later down the line, but I'm very excited to pick that one up. So there's Goodnight Kiss. If you want to hear more of my thoughts on this book, you can go to my last Fear Street reading vlog, where I talk about this a little more in depth. A similar author that I loved very much when I was a kid was Christopher Pike. Yeah, I'm a very big fan of his books. In fact, I have quite a few of them in my background here. Recently, a book came out called Hall of Mirrors by Charles Ashe, which is kind of a retro throwback to Christopher Pike books. Hall of Mirrors by Charles Ashe follows a kid named Danny who has just lost his twin brother. So he's kind of grieving his twin brother and is having a very hard time. It says here on the back, his father has abandoned his family, his mother is lost in her own grief, and his best friend just wants him to move on so they can have a great senior year. The only person that seems to understand his pain is the fortune teller at the local carnival, but her words haunt him. There is a darkness in you. More people will die. I loved this. I thought this was a fantastic little indie book. It's very short, about 200 pages, which is about as long as a Christopher Pike book. And I think this fits in really well with those Pike books of the 80s and 90s. It's brief, but not too brief. It just doesn't overstay its welcome. It gets you a little bit emotionally involved, but not too much that it's gonna be a complete downer. And it keeps you guessing whether or not this is a supernatural story or if this is grounded in reality in some way. There's a little bit of a gray area there. I loved this. I thought it was really well written. I thought it was very fun. And it doesn't try too hard to be, super elevated. It is a little bit, because Christopher Pike was in a lot of ways, but at the end of the day, it's still a pulpy little 90s style YA throwback, and I thought it was a lot of fun. So I recommend Hall of Mirrors by Charles Ashe. Next is a real young adult horror book from the 80s, and that is The Fog by Caroline B. Cooney. This is a point horror book, the first in a trilogy, actually. I read this and book 2, which is called The Snow, last year, and I loved both of them. So this follows a young girl named Christina, and she lives on an island in New England with her family. And, her whole life she's gone to school on the island, but now since she's 13, she's being shipped across the waters to the mainland, where she's going to go to school and find out what it's like to be with the rest of civilization. So she is staying with a couple of her friends at this house run by a couple called the Shivingtons. Mr. Shivington is the principal at the school, and his wife, Mrs. Shivington, is a teacher. And immediately when Christina comes to stay with this couple, she thinks something's wrong. They aren't who they seem to be. There seems to be something very amiss about these people. From there, you get something very unconventional for a point horror book. This is very strange. There's a lot of gaslighting in this book, so it feels very much like a gothic story, but you also have a lot of very strange, weird, almost cosmic imagery going on. I still don't understand it because I've not read the final book yet. I'm going to be reading that later this month, and I'm very excited to see how it wraps up, because I really don't know. I don't know exactly what's happening. All I know is that it's weird, and it was not what I was expecting from a point horror book. So I'm loving this series, and I especially loved The Fog, and The Snow was really good as well. So there is The Fog by Caroline B. Cooney. I highly recommend this, but don't go into it expecting your typical point book, because it isn't. The writing is very strange, and it's not just a trashy good time. It's a little bit more than that. Speaking of a trashy good time, I also reread Flowers in the Attic by V.C. Andrews last year. This is a book that I read in my early teens, maybe even my tweens. I was probably a little too young to read it, but this is always kind of categorized as a young adult book, and it isn't. It really isn't. It's a total adult read, even though it follows kids. So this is a very controversial book, but also a modern classic. This follows, of course, the Dollanganger family. So you have the mother and father with their silky, shiny blonde hair, very beautiful people, and their 4 beautiful children, all with the same color hair. The father ends up dying, and the mother, in a panic, decides, I'm going to take my kids to my mother's home, and I'm going to lock my kids up in the attic so that way they can't have contact of any kind with my parents, and I'm going to try to win back my dad's approval so that way I can inherit his money. And then she and her kids can go off together and live an easy life. That's the plan initially, but as the kids are locked up in the attic and the mother goes off to win her father's affections back, months and months go by, and then years, and before long the children are struggling to survive in the attic, and the older children become pretty much the parents to the younger kids, and a lot of craziness ensues. This is a very melodramatic book. It feels very much like a soap opera, but it's also extremely messed up and goes to some places that honestly everybody knows about. Everybody knows what Flowers in the Attic is, I think, by now. It does its job. It is a disturbing book, but it is a classic. It really is. So there you go. Those are my top 5 books that I read last year. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoyed this more casual little chat. If you enjoyed this, on my Patreon, I do post pretty much weekly videos, very much like this, where I just sit down and I talk, I chat. They're very very casual little videos. I don't do anything fancy, and I have a little over 100 videos on my Patreon that you can go and watch right now. You can join my Patreon for as little as $2 a month. If you'd like to join my Patreon, I will link that down below. If not, you can keep watching videos here on YouTube for free. Thank you again for watching. I hope you had a very good Christmas if you celebrate. Happy New Year, and I will catch you in the next episode of Library Macabre. Later, creeps.